So this is a great subject to end this incredible hotel technology forum on. We've heard from some incredible hoteliers, some great executives, some incredible technology vendor partners over the last day and a half about how to win and lead with innovation, winning the customer, the possibilities of a hospitality industry powered by AI and cutting-edge technology, innovative cybersecurity strategies from other industries, flexibility as a source of competitive advantage. Fixify said yesterday that tech investments are forecasted to increase 78% over the next 3 years. Robert in his talk on the impact of a CRM powered by AI and Moby's intent-based search based on Gen AI. And then the findings from the lodging technology study that we just saw, right? The common thread for all of those components ultimately is the fact that they cost resources. And to secure those resources, they must be part of a tactical and strategic plan that's part of a budget that ultimately is approved. And you'd think listening to this group that there'd be no battle at all, right? That relative to other disciplines, it's obvious that IT drives incredible business velocity and it's transformative for our industry. But after this forum's over, hoteliers are going to go back and they're going to have to fight for funds relative to other departments. You know, interestingly, on the lodging survey again that we just saw, 60% claim they lack the IT funds necessary, and 50% said they lack the inability to derive ROI from it. So we're fortunate today to have these two incredible industry leaders next to us who have successfully navigated these challenges, Diane Lee from JC Resorts and Richard Tudgay, CTO, Remington Hospitality. So my first question to both of you today is if you could share a little bit about your journey with IT management, what the size of technology investments you're responsible for today, and how has that evolved over your career? And Diane, start with you, please.
Oh boy. So JC Resorts is an independent owned management company, and I joined the company almost 20 years ago from San Francisco Bay Area when I worked at the Starwood as the regional director of IT, managing 7-8 hotels there. And never thought about coming from big chain to a small independent hotels. And but the ownership is the executives are very convincing, and I decided to step into that the organization. What a journey! I step into an organization that everything's broken. Everything's broken. I was told there's no the email was is down every day, and the network's down every day, and I have general manager who said I'm ready to quit because I can't manage this because of the impact on the customers and guests. So when I interviewed the job on site, they intentionally didn't show me the server room. They told me later that's intentional because if I show you the server room, you might not take the job.
Surprise.
Surprise. So anyway, long story short, I was able to make a lot of changes and managing. Really have to start from the right kind of budget, the right system, and I immediately find out the independent hotels are very different from a big chain because big chain has business drives from the top down. So as in the hotel level, doesn't matter as a manager, franchise owned, you don't have a choice. You have to follow the standards. In the independent hotel, you can do anything you want. It all depends on how you drive the process. At a time, guest-facing spending is definitely take priority. It's like anything in the back door, anything in the data center, anything the guest cannot see, it's not important. And so I told ownership then, I think, the only way we can make changes in this organization is get the right fund and then do the right thing. So they said, Diane, go for it. So, and starting that point on, the changes I made to the organization is really, really make a huge difference. You got to make the right decision. That's the fundamental success story of any IT leadership. You have to make the right choice. You have to make strategic planning scalable, future-proof, because there's no way you want to waste money of an independent hotel because, I came from a style background. I remember if you tried a system that doesn't work out very well, it's okay. It's a big company, down the drain, start a new one. This independent hotel, there's no such thing. Zero tolerance for waste of money. So nowadays, some of my project is billions of dollars on IT funding because, like, for example, we just did a generational renovation in Surf and Sand Resort in Laguna Beach. The IT itself, the IT technology, low voltage, everything itself is almost 8 to 10 million. And that alone is 1 million, and then I've been working with a lot of vendors and some of them in this room to make the right choice. And what is driven that made it to 10 million on IT is because the ownership realized that it's important to give the guests ultimate experience, have a lot of guest-facing automation in the guest room. When the guests enter the hotel room, the shades goes up, the lights start to, automatically change to a different theme, and there is a lot of guest-facing automation, and that drives the IT spending. And I have to go out and find several different vendors to see which one can produce the best DaaS. That alone, it's $1 billion spending. You got to make the right choice.
That's right.
So anyway, to answer his question, there's a lot of money now that we have we're spending, but every single dollar you have to be on the right target.
And Richard, same question to you. How has that evolved for you over your career? I know you're new at Remington, and comparatively where you came from to where you are now, has your philosophy changed relative to budgeting for IT?
Yes. I've been at three places, as just mentioned. I've only been in Remington for 7 months now. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, I was with Highgate for 8 years. Prior to that, I was with Omni Hotels and Resorts for 15 years. So Omni is owned by a holding company, which is owned by one person. So in essence, it was one owner. I went to Highgate, and that was purely a management company that had 23 owners when I walked in the door. 50 hotels, grew it to 345 by the time I left, with about 47 owners. The interesting thing there was Highgate the holding company became one of the biggest owners during my tenure there because of the pandemic. And then moved over to Remington 7 months ago, and same thing, a holding company, Ashford, that owns 60 out of our 127 hotels. So 60 are owned by one owner, 67 are owned by basically 30 plus owners. So it's onesie, twosies, and sure, absolutely, Max, your approach is completely different with every owner, especially when it's one owner owning 60, or in the Omni case, owning them all, that you have to approach each one with the individualism that's all they care about, whether it's one 95-room hotel or 60 hotels that represents whatever, 4,000 rooms. Mm-hmm. You have to approach it as that's all that matters when you walk in there, is to them is their hotels. They don't really want to hear about other hotels and what they spend. They just want to look at their hotel. And each owner's different. Some are focused on innovation. Some are focused on security. Hey, security is the most important thing. I don't want to be in the paper. Some are focused on the bottom line. Look, we didn't make any money this year. How can I spend on IT? And you have to work through that. And the interesting thing has been dealing with the brands, because you have brand standards that you have to tell owners, you have to do this. You want to put that sign on the side of the building. It's not an option. For the longest time, you could get waivers, and as time has gone by, especially after a few years after the pandemic, they've really started, meaning the brands have started to shut down on waivers and say, no, you're going to do this by December 31st, 2024. And more we're starting to see deadlines be put into place. And now approaching the owners with that, obviously the longer lead time you can get yourself, the better off you're going to be. So yes, it has been definitely through my career, interesting enough, going from one owner operator to many again, very, very different approaches.
And so understanding those hot button issues for owners, for us at CH, we have quite a few owners who the property doesn't necessarily matter. It does matter, but less so. It could be a legacy project, right? And so being financially profitable or optimized may not be their top priority. And that all those decisions translate down into how you craft ultimately an IT budget, whether, like you said, Richard, if they're focused on innovation or if they're focused on having the greatest guest experience, like you said, Diane, coming into the room and the lighting is perfect and the shades rise. Those things are all quintessential, but it really does vary per owner, right? And so I think for all of us in this room, the guest experience is the cornerstone of just about every investment. Can you share a specific example where technology that you lobbied for or advocated for directly improved the guest experience and what that was like, or any challenges you faced lobbying for that investment? And Diane, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the guest-facing technology is all about what they can experience with, and I think from day one, I want to make sure when the guests come to the hotel, they have a good Wi-Fi, good internet, and good technology packages. They don't have to worry about it, especially in the meeting space that our resort is very unique. We hosted a lot of high-end technology conferences. I mean, HDNG, we hosted twice in our resort, back to back, and technology is very important for such a venue. And also, we hosted one of the organizations we hosted is the Google Executive Retreat. So Google is very demanding. They come over, they said, we need this and that, we need a security, we need to make sure that everything dedicated to our network. We need a speed, we have to test the speed every corner, make sure everything's good. And so I walked the space with the tech lead and did everything 5 months ahead of the conference. They keep coming back and check again, and it's very demanding. But so we want to make the technology, we invest in technology, we never want the technology to become the drag of guest satisfaction. Also, because group business is our bread and butter in most of our hotels. If they sense that the technology is not solid, they're not gonna come back. They're not gonna sign a long-term contract. So when I first started, we have guest tech. I'm not saying guest tech is bad. I'm just saying guest tech servicing our internet. That was not working out very well. The call center does not answer the phone very well, and then say is causing a lot of problems. There's a lot of complaints. And then when Meraki started to be the cloud, APs and cloud management, I took a very bold step. I said, I'm gonna use Meraki. I'm gonna manage the whole thing on our own. And that's a real success story. We don't have to worry about having third party. We saved quite a bit of money on there. And so we were able to manage that on our own, and the guests are happy, and we can do customization, instantly without having to rely on third-party vendors. So technology investment in the right space, the right product is the key to bring satisfaction to our guests. That's a life story, really.
That's fantastic. And using those successfully funded projects that you've executed on time or under budget, those are great case studies that you can use to bolster your case for additional projects, right? Richard, I wonder, what role does data play in convincing boards to approve, or owners to approve funding projects? Is there any particular data points that you use, whether it's RevPAR or the GSI, or what have you found to be effective?
Yeah, you nailed it. The guest satisfaction scores, or whatever you use. Wi-Fi is one of the ones that I always jump on. I've always jumped on it. Years ago, I had very small children. They're all adults now, but when we would take them to hotels, they were the first ones to go, the Wi-Fi sucks here. And I was like, all right, can you say it a little bit louder? Because I'm the head of IT for this company, so.
Nice.
And it taught me, though, that was what was important to them, and if it was important to them, and again, they were, ages, that it was important to others. And that was one of the things I got on early in my career is Wi-Fi has to work. And you look at guest scores and have running, in my career now, Marriott's, Hilton's, IHG's, Choice, Wyndham's, you really see that as the pattern sometimes, that you want to improve your scores, let's look at your Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, it has become hot water. It's become a great bed. It has to work. And exactly, Max, that you go in looking at those data points of this is why we're recommending this too, because this is the trend we're seeing. You have to get operations behind you. Obviously, you want the hotel always behind you in that case, making sure that they also hear it, want it in their priority, that they go, oh, well, yeah, there's some complaints. No, you need them to make sure nope, we hear it all the time, look at our scores, so everyone's saying the same thing.
Yeah,
That's right.
Wi-Fi is according to statistics, Wi-Fi complaint is one of the highest in hospitality in hotels.
And just because you're not hearing any complaints doesn't mean it's working, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I want to turn a little bit to risk and cybersecurity. So cyber can often be seen as a cost center with no ROI. It can be difficult to quantify risk. And so, Diane, how are you thinking about cybersecurity investments, and how do you convince an owner that it's a prudent investment, and talk about how that relates to an opportunity cost of not investing in cybersecurity when the cost of a breach can be in the millions of dollars?
Exactly, and then I came from a style background. That's really the place that I started with PCI compliance, SOX audit, and back early 20s. And when I started to go to start enter my new job here 20 years ago, I talk about PCI compliance, and the owner was like, So I said, okay. So there's definitely no regulation, no standard, no compliances there, and you can tell just by looking at the system in place, and so we have to implement every single thing from scratch, and that's start from PCI. We have to start with the quality scan, with penetration tests, all the things, and then guess what? A few years later, it becomes the standard. The penetration test is a requirement, right? I mean, we have to do network insurance, and the insurance has a big list of things, and every year changes, tighter and tighter. And not just that, looking at the industry, look at how many, property got hacked, and including all this big chain. Smaller hotel, independent hotels, even in close neighborhood in our backyard, it's really a wake-up call, right? So fortunately, I was able to convince the ownership. Keeping up with cybersecurity is really important. So I start from the bottom to make sure they're educated. So I was able to really spend the decent amount of money to get approval, to get things moving, and that's the only way to do it. I think it's definitely another success story there. So.
And Richard, same question to you. Obviously, it's maybe a little bit different, branded versus independent, and maybe with independents, because there's no standards being pushed down, you have to be more persuasive relative to why compliance measures are so important. Or maybe that's not the case, and it's self-evident.
Yeah, and in our case, we had an incident last year that brought it to the forefront. I deal with risk inside of Remington, and I deal with risk inside of Ashford, and then our third-party owners. It is top of mind. I was not with the company at the time, but I was told it was incredibly painful. The residual a year plus later is still incredibly painful. Cyber insurance that we all have to deal with. Right there, just everything, all the hoops we have to go through in order to maintain that and keep that. For me right now, that's an easy spend, because they saw the downside to it, exactly what you said, and nobody wants to go through it. I wasn't there, but I've read everything and obviously interviewed everyone to hear what went through. And so no, for me, that's an easy spend. I don't have to fight for that, because they've seen the downside. And also I deal with 2 public REITs, so I have to be very careful there as well with the SEC, as I'm even myself, I was not involved in it, but still have to talk with the SEC about what I'm doing to make sure it never happens again.
Yep.
Wow, yeah. Similarly, maybe from a broader point of view, for both of you, do you feel like your businesses are spending enough on information technology? Are you satisfied with how much you're spending? Is there always more you could be spending? I just wonder how you think about that for both JC and for Remington. Diane, you first, please.
I have to be very blessed by the ownership support in IT spending. I have to say, based on the size of our properties, and I really was able to get a lot of things done, with the right kind of money, and they're very, but bottom line is you have to make some good decisions. I think you have to kind of really build the confidence that they have in you. I want to show some case studies here real quickly. So, like when I first started the company, like I said, everything's down. So they don't use Microsoft product at that time. Everything's Novell. Even the email is GroupWise. I never heard that before. I came to a site and they said, "No, GroupWise is down every day." I said, "What is GroupWise?" And that's the email. So when we hired somebody from outside into the company, and they called me, they said, "Diane, somebody put a joke on me." I said, "What joke?" They put a GroupWise on my computer saying this is my email. Who uses GroupWise these days, right? So the first thing I did is I'm gonna have to change email. So I bring up Microsoft, and you do have to do Microsoft. And then we have to build up the EA agreement licenses, select license. We want to make, there's no license at the time, of course, for the organization. Everything was box license, everything very, 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 very. So, and then the owner said, "I heard that Microsoft is very expensive. We can't afford it." And then not only that, but it's a lot of viruses. It's not easy to support. I said, "Well, let me worry about the cost. If I can prove this is the future, it's the future, it's also going to be integrated with so many different systems, and let me also worry about the viruses. So if that's only 2 items you worry about, then give a shot." So I transitioned from GroupWise to Outlook over the weekend, and becomes one of the best success story. And they said, "Diane, I can't believe it. You did it over the weekend, and then now we have email not down and everything." And so I was able to really convince them. And the second success story I read in the same space is, I realized after a few years of doing that, the Exchange server becomes really a very, very high maintenance. You have to hire some Exchange expert and supporting that. The data become big and grows, and the email becomes more, spending a little bit more. So I have to think about what to do with Microsoft down the road. One of the conferences, Mike Blade, he was with Hyatt. He talked about his success with adopting Microsoft 365. That's like over 12 years ago. And so I called him afterwards. I said, "Well, I'm thinking about doing 365. How do you think about it? How do you like it in Hyatt?" He said, "Oh, we love it. Now we got more mailboxes for everybody and things like that." So I said, "I'm doing it." So I transitioned to 365 in early 2012, one of the first hotel right behind Hyatt did it. And then from that point on, the owner was like, "Diane, you probably can do anything that I would not say no anymore. Because you,
Nice.
yeah, I was like, you save so much money." And until this day, he said, "You should know how much money he saved on Microsoft, and then also bring the uptime 99.9%, just like Microsoft did." And nowadays, that's before Team, before SharePoint, before everything online. But nowadays, that's, I said, you look at the Microsoft stock, $34 that time. Now it's like, so, yeah, you gotta have to do it right. That's the key thing.
Richard, I'm curious, just given you've been in your role for 7 months, when you came in, was your approach, again, relative to this particular topic, were you building consensus with stakeholders, or were you challenging the status quo?
I was building consensus with the stakeholders. One of the things that, so Remington did not have a CTO at the time, and they tried to go with running it without, and just having 3 VPs in the IT. And unfortunately, they built 3 different silos in that. So I was dealing with the consensus first in IT, getting everyone to realize we're one IT department. We're not business applications, business intelligence, and operations for IT operations, for lack of a better word. That we're one IT department. Everyone outside of this sees us as one IT department. I had to start there and then work to building relationships with commercial, HR, operations, so they could see where we were changing. And as someone brought up in the prior session is the MSP and dealing with the MSP and what's their role and what's Remington IT's role, and really spelling that out over the last 7 months to build the relationships to get them behind as we move forward with projects.
Nice. So when you think about budgeting, it typically is bifurcated into OpEx and CapEx, and I wonder for both of you how you think about that. Is it one process? Is it two separate processes where you're looking at your OpEx and your CapEx and planning strategically? Diane?
Yeah, very different vertical. CapEx is, based on revenue, right? I mean, normally supposed to have 4% of the entire revenue spent on IT as CapEx, but not always the case. Depend on the the property performance, everything, and the other and also other things that come to play that we need funding. The OpEx is more like you have to do it. I create a matrix of how much every year each category of licenses, services, and you have to budget for it, and it's on black and white. So that's work with the controller, financial direct divisions, and make it right. And as long as you put effort into making it more as close as possible with some lead room to have some surprises, then it's very easy to do. And then nowadays we talk about cloud. Cloud stuff is not a really spending in the front. It's everything bundled into subscription. Everything becomes subscription. That's a challenge, actually. So I was able to always have the first year spending put in the CapEx. That made the general manager very happy. It's, oh gosh, now we don't have to worry about putting all the money into operational expense, and then in the future, then you can that would also help with surprise stuff coming out. Like sometimes the virtualization, they change license to a subscription base, and all of a sudden the price goes up so much, and then Microsoft would keep doing that. They was like, oh no, Windows 10 is obsolete by October next year, then all the workstations have to get a Windows license, and then the hardware had to be compatible with different things, and that's all cost money, right? So yeah, by doing this model of putting the first year into CapEx, and that's actually a good strategy for making those two budgets working for the hotels. Yeah.
Yeah, Richard, same question for you. OpEx and CapEx at Remington and Ashford companies.
Yeah, CapEx is very easy if you can do it now. That's not even a conversation. If I can capitalize something, it's easy to get done. OpEx, exactly what Diane said, it is becoming such a struggle to keep up with the ever-changing cost of that OpEx. And Microsoft's a great example, as they're changing their model in 2025. So you have to look at all of your hotels, all the licenses they use, how Microsoft is going to change that, and make sure you budget that appropriately. And then even though you change it and it is what it is, you're still going to have to sit in front of somebody and explain to them why it's changing and why it's going to this, and it's going to be more cost. Very, very difficult conversations, and you hear yourself saying the same thing over and over and over again.
Yep.
Are there any initiatives for either of you, and Diane, start with you, that come under more scrutiny than others, that require more approvals with your ownership at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially Rich just mentioned, sometimes you have to talk the talk. I mean, technology sometimes can be overwhelming. I mean, some people. I used to work for the general manager in Starwood time, and he said, Diane, I only have 5 minutes attention span for technology. Shoot me. So 5 minutes. so not everybody has that momentum to really absorb technology. It can be boring, can be overwhelming. So I really have to put the high level stuff into real common sense kind of knowledge to make sure they understand what that means. And I think thanks to my diverse background of academics, I have degrees in humanity, business, technology combined, 1 bachelor, 2 master. And then so I have a lot of background to help me communicate directly to the audience, to the right audience. And that's really, really a good thing for IT leadership these days. And because IT leadership, my peers sometimes said, I had a hard time convincing the ownership to spend this money. I don't know, I can't make them understand the need for it. But I said, you just have to make sure they understand, put them into the space as if this is for their home, for their own, personal needs, and then you can relay that. So, like for example, I put a fiber everywhere in my hotel. Most hotels, the fiber in our neighborhood is first one. Like the Rancho Bernardo Inn, when I started fiber 2007, there's no fiber around. So AT&T has to say, I have to dig a trench through your golf course. I said, do it. As long as it don't cost me a penny. So I said, okay, I'm not cost you $20,000 for that trench, but that's gonna. So, and then when my owner has a problem in his whole home with Cox, spectral cable modem, I put a fiber in his house, and he know oh. That's why fiber is so important. So you kind of relate something to a personal need, and then you get things done. That's the way you can communicate. Yeah.
Richard, we have a lot of vendor partners in the room. How are you leveraging enterprise agreements and vendor relationships to make projects more approachable, more cost-effective across your business?
Great question, because when you run hotels that you own and you run hotels that are third-party managed, you still want to get synergies of the vendors that you use, and you want to try to limit how many vendors you use. One, it becomes easier to support, and the part B is you get leverage of economies of scale. And it's sure for 60 of my hotels, it's very easy that I'm just convincing the asset manager in Ashford, here's what we're going to do. A lot of times they're involved in it, very involved in it. And it's easy, but then taking that to the third party, and they, that, well, I've always used, or oh, I hear this is. And sometimes you have to respect that, and you do have to do it. You go, okay, do I really want to fight that battle? And sometimes you go, no, look, this is our standard. This is the cost savings you're going to get by using our standard, and present it. And it's still up to the third-party owner to say yay or nay to it, but at least you presented your case and showed, in most times, if there's savings or how much easier it'll be to support. But it is an ongoing challenge, especially more and more owners are more heavily involved in vendor selection, or have someone they want involved in vendor selection, where before in my career that was not the case, but certainly post-pandemic it has become the case.
Yeah, I want to add something. Like one of the most challenging project I did is we are one of the first hotel group that kind of implement virtualization VMware back in 2012. I can never make my owner understand what virtualization means in the data center. When he signed that 6-digit budget, the approval, he said, I'm going to sign it, but I don't, tell me what is virtualization. So I try to explain to him. Until this day, he'll never understand that part. But, at least he signed, but I'm just saying.
That's trust.
Yeah.
What types of IT initiatives are you planning on investing in the future? We've talked a lot about the future here. What are you both thinking about, and do you foresee any challenges with getting the funding for future-based initiatives? Diane?
I think, what is trending now is really the AI, right? I think AI is coming to the play every single field of our lives now. My owner to get a new iPhone, he said, Diane, you have to teach me how to use the Apple AI. I said, oh, I don't even have the new iPhone yet. I'm going to have to get a new iPhone when I got back to San Diego. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is really kind of what we want to do for future-proof our product, and how to create more customized, automation. We talk about a lot of challenges, and people say, we're still using Excel. Yeah. Trust me, that's still the case. Some people are very, they just like, I don't want to not, using Excel. Excel is my bread and butter. Some of the controllers, we have to let them get rid of it and then use something more automated, to make the data more lively and dynamic. So that's our pretty big project. Next step is just make sure that we are future-proof ourselves.
And Richard, to you, I know automation's a big passion of yours. How are you thinking about future improvements, and how does automation come into play?
Well, the presentation yesterday from the marketing person, that was wonderful. It's one of the things. We have 20 independent hotels that we're trying to better understand is how can we automate all that customer data we have and really drive revenue on the guest that we think is going to stay at those hotels, and the business intelligence part of IT is very heavily involved with,
Yep.
with commercial and marketing in that. And then just looking across everything we're doing, where can we automate, where can we improve? And you know, for me, a lot of my hotels are branded, so I just let the brands drive where they're going to go with their innovation. But just looking internally, what can we continue to automate? And even before I came in, they've automated quite a bit. And since I've come in, have continued on those projects, and we will continue on those projects to automate.
That's fantastic. Closing advice for anyone who's about to be pitching something. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned about securing IT funding that you wish you might have known earlier in your career? Diane?
I think you know, the key thing is really do your due diligence. You know, I think most complaints from the ownership is saying, you know, this guy tried to propose something. You ask a question, he said, I'll get back to you. You ask another question, he said, oh, sorry, I don't have the data. So you really have to do a lot of due diligence. You know, when we did the virtualization, we produced a few pages of justification and statement and ROI, and to make sure that they understand the benefit of it. And so you have to kind of prove ROI, you have to kind of do due diligence, and also for future proof. You know, one of the best compliments I got from my ownership is, Diane, you know, every single time you propose a project, it's always strategic. So it's for long term. Yeah, I said, that's the only way to get it done. I'm running a business as if it's my own business. And that's the best, that's really, you have to work really hard. And by doing so, not only you keep your staff happy, you know, you also make your guests happy, and then you keep, everything's a win-win. So I have staff working for me like 18 and 19 years. They said, Diane, you know, it's so hard to find a very supportive boss like you, and I'm not gonna leave you. And then, so it's developing the potential and make sure that you win the budget battle, and then they have more. They know you can get things done, and they're motivated. So that's the best advice I can provide from my personal experience.
Great advice, Richard. Same question for you.
I would tell you to know your content inside and out. Do not try to wing it. It's okay to say, let me get back to you. I don't know that. You have to watch how many times you say that. And then have the buy-in. And for me at Remington, it is the buy-in of operations. I have one SVP that works with me with Ashford, and I have one SVP that works with me with the other 30+ owners, and I make sure I have their buy-in and understanding of what's prioritized for them, and that they understand when I'm going in, what I'm presenting, why I'm presenting it, and have their agreement before I go in there, because the last thing you want is them to go, well, no, I really think you should replace the carpets and not the IT. You want to know that before you go in, that, okay, the carpets are more important, maybe we do not have this conversation. But I cannot stress enough to know your content and try to think of all the questions that particular owner could ask you.
Nice. We have any time for questions? Looks like we're hitting it right on time. Any questions for our esteemed panelists?
I don't see any hands.
Looks like we nailed it. Thank you.
Yeah, right on time.